Welcome to today's Power Lunch. I hope you're having a great one. And as we gather together to talk about the Bible, to have a few minutes to pray together, I just want to talk about today being a parent. And most parents were once children. It's just a common correlation. Most parents were once children. We were all children. And some of us who are maybe will never become parents in the strict sense of the word. We all have an opportunity to parent somebody. But parenting thing is a volatile thing. I mean, it really is. The potential for good is off the charts. The potential for pain is also there. It's interesting when children start to grow that they look at their parents. Usually kind of the most common thing that happens is they look at their parents and they say, my mom, my dad, they're the king of the world. They got everything right. They can do everything perfect. And as they grow, and they're like, oh, my mom can beat your mom up kind of thing, it often turns into those teenage years where they're like, man, my parents don't know anything. I mean, they're just like dumb as our stump. How did they manage to have a child like me? And then, kind of the carousel continues to go around, and the child finally comes to a point where they realize, oh, maybe my parents knew more than I thought. And we see that in 1 Samuel chapter 2. Hannah had prayed for this boy, for this child, and in the second chapter of 1 Samuel, she goes into the song of praise. It's very similar to the song of praise that Mary goes into in regard to having Jesus. And when she found out she's going to have Jesus and that God was going to bless her, it was a very similar type occurrence. And so it was just this celebration of goodness and of God. Hey, Greg, good to see you. We're talking about 1 Samuel chapter 1. What's happening with you? Tell me what's going on. We're talking about being a parent today. And as we parent children, and parent really isn't a verb, it's really a noun. We don't parent children. We don't pastor churches. I hear pastors say this all the time. I pastor a church. That's like saying I teacher a class. Pastor's not a verb. Teacher's not a verb. Parent's not a verb. But we can serve as a parent. We can serve as a teacher. We can serve as a pastor. And we really do. And it's an exciting thing. Hey, Lorraine. Hey, Ann. It's an exciting thing to be a parent and to hold that child and to have that child depend on you. And like we said, the children often look at their parents early on and go, man, they're the greatest in the world. Then they look at you and go, you're dumb as a stump. And then they come back and they say, oh yeah, you really got something. And what's amazing is that when Hannah brought her son to the temple, when she brought Samuel to the temple, she had this encounter with Eli, and we find that God gave her more sons and daughters, that God gave her this blessing. But I love where it says in the second chapter where she would bring a little robe, and it kind of just focuses in on those young years, those tender years, where she would bring a little ephod, a little robe, kind of like a vest that kind of was long, so that he could be like a junior priest, all official and everything. And just think about her making that robe, sitting at home every year, making that robe, getting ready to take it up there, wondering how big had he become, what had happened, what was going on with him, and wanting to see what God can do. And when you think about parenting, the expectation from a child's point of view can be really high. And I think that's why sometimes children are like, man, my parents don't know anything. The expectation is to the moon and back. And reality sinks in that there's really no such thing as a perfect parent or as a perfect child. I know. There really isn't. And it reminds me all the time, because I was a parent at one point, I guess I'm still a parent, but it reminds me of the Garden of Eden. God put Adam and Eve in the perfect environment, and they sinned. If God would have been a fallen human, you know what he would have done? He'd have said, oh, it's my fault. I should have gave him more. I should have gave him a better environment. I should have provided for him. I think God would have started second guessing. Oh, when I walked with him in the cool of the day on that day, did I say the wrong thing? I think God would have started guessing himself if he'd have been a fallen human. But the reality is that Adam and Eve's sin was not God's fault. They chose their own path. And we see with Eli that he wasn't just this horrible guy, but his sons really went down a horrible path. Elkanah and Hannah, Hannah's husband's name was Elkanah. I mean, they were pretty solid people, and they gave their son a firm foundation. But Samuel still had to make a decision to choose what is right and to do what is right. He could have gone the wayward way just as easy as everybody else. And it's amazing to me how so many times in the Bible you'll see like a really strong man of God will have children who just fall apart. And the reality is that we all get to choose our own way. And so if you know, hey, Aaron, good to see you. It must be early morning for you, bud. Early morning. Good morning. Way down in New Zealand. And so if you're a parent today, or if you're a grandparent, or if you're going to be a parent, planning on being a parent, you need to bring your best to the table. You need to let God use you to influence these little lives in a powerful way. But we have to remember that that little life is made in the image of God and will make choices that will determine their destiny. And although you can try to be the best parent, you're never going to be the perfect parent. And ultimately, as a parent, what we do is we point our children to the parent with a big P, with a capital P, the parent, the one who created us in his image. And so I just want to encourage you today. If we've got any prayer requests, we want to have a time of prayer. I know a lot of parents out there who have been really so burdened because they feel like, I messed up, and as parents, we can do some stuff that really screws our kids up. We can. And there's times that we have to go to them and say, I'm sorry, I need to ask forgiveness of you because I messed up. And there's times that our kids need to do the same thing. We know that's right. There's times that our kids need to do that because that's what it means to be a part of a family. But the reality is we can't live our entire lives pointing at each other and saying, that's the reason I'm going to be broken forever. And with Hannah, she was broken until God fixed her. And with little Samuel could have said, well, I'm living in this house with Eli, and he's not as cool as my parents, or he's not as good as my parents. But I think Samuel realized that the Lord was his shepherd, and that God gave him wonderful parents in Elkanah and Hannah, and God gave him an opportunity to serve him close to the altar, where God's presence was in a special way. So I just want to pray with you guys in our power lunch, and I just want to encourage you that if there are people out there that that are parents that are struggling, this may be an important word for them. Because one of the things that we know is that Satan loves to highlight the things that we do wrong and really push us into a dark, dark place. And there is nothing less effective than a demoralized parent who can't stop looking in the rearview mirror and saying, I messed up yesterday. If you messed up yesterday and you can't let it go, you're going to miss your best today. And in Jesus, the same forgiveness that is offered to your children is offered to you. You're not a perfect parent. You weren't a perfect child, but you are perfectly loved and accepted in Jesus. So I don't see any prayer requests coming up. So I'm just going to start praying for you guys. Lord, I pray for Pastor Aaron down in New Zealand. I pray that you would work with him in Karkia, and I just pray that you would give that entire church wisdom on next steps and put the wind of your spirit in the sails of that church. Father, I pray for Greg that you would help them connect with their family as they're getting ready to do that, for Lorraine, and pray for her family that they would be strong in you and healthy. Father, we pray for Anne and her entire family that they would know your presence, your powerful presence and blessing. And for those who are coming on later, put a prayer request on here. We'd love to see that, look at that. And I want you to have a blessed day and keep working forward in the Grow 365 Everyday Bible Study. Dig in deep and keep following faithfully. Have an awesome day.